The following is a presentation from the MJCast, the internet's premier podcast on all things Michael Jackson.
I'm a Black American. I am proud of who I am.
Together, we can make a change in the world.
I want to see you!
I like to take sounds and put them under the microscope.
There's a driving bass, you become the bass.
Let the music write itself.
I don't sing it if I don't mean it.
Welcome to the MJCast, your source of news, discussion, and interviews on the King of Pop. Hello and welcome to the MJCast. I'm your host, Jamon Bull, and very happy to be here today with my two buddies, Charlie and Charlie. Two Charlies today. Charlie Carter, our chief editor of the MJCast, and also Charlie Thomson returning back. We're going to have some good chats today about MJ news and lots of things that Charlie Thomson has been up to in his travels over in America. So, fellas, welcome to the show. Carter, how are you going?
Not too bad, Jamon. Thank you for having me. Good to talk to you both.
Wonderful to hear your voice. And Charlie Thomson, how are you?
I'm all right, thank you. Good to be here. How are you doing?
Pretty good, thanks. I understand you've been a bit sick with jet lag since coming back from your trip to America.
Yeah, I think my mistake was sleeping on the plane, which I normally don't do. So we took off to come home at midnight, LA time. I slept on the plane, and by the time I landed in England, it was evening. So it was bedtime when I got home, and I didn't need to sleep. I was out of whack for about 2 weeks after that, but I'm feeling a bit better now.
Yeah, that'll always do it. My God, travel. We will start by talking about, it's kind of sad starting the MJCast these days because we're always talking about people passing away, which is, it is just, I don't know. I think we're getting to that stage posthumously after Michael's death where a lot of his collaborators are starting to pass away. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I see that somebody else has passed away that Michael worked with, it's just obviously very sad in its own right, but just also a reminder, you know, how long ago now that he was alive and maybe how old I'm getting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge connoisseur of his work, but I do have a favorite story about Madsen, which is I read it in Empire. I used to subscribe to Empire magazine, which is a British film magazine.
So did I.
Oh, really? I wonder if it's the same mag or if they do a different one for Australia.
It was way back when I was a teenager.
Yeah, same. I've sort of subscribed from probably age about 17 until maybe 23 or something, and then I stopped because basically every edition of the magazine was called the Star Wars edition or the Indiana Jones edition. I was just like, right, you know, I'm not interested in either of these franchises, and I'm sick of every episode, every edition being this. Or Marvel. They're all fucking Marvel after a while as well. So, but there was a great feature once about some film that Madsen was making, which I can't remember what it was. But he basically had a massive disagreement with the director. In the script, his character died, but he decided that that did not serve the plot. It would be much better if he did not die and he carried on being in the film. And so when it came to the day they had to shoot his death scene, he just refused to die. Every time they started the camera rolling and said, action, they'd like shoot him and he'd just go, you missed me. You know, so... I don't know how they got around that in the end, and I wish I could remember the title of the film. Anyway, that's my one thing that I can remember about this guy, apart from obviously Reservoir Dogs and the Tarantino stuff and You Rock My World.
Yeah, well, we are, of course, talking about Michael Madsen. I didn't mention earlier who had died, so he was 67, died from cardiac arrest at his Malibu home recently, and he is a film star that many reporters, I guess, retrospectively discussing as Hollywood's bad guy, which is, you know, an archetype he played really well, I think, in his movies. All I would say is, like, I love him in all of Quentin Tarantino's stuff. I think he's an incredible actor. I just have always felt that he was really underutilized in You Rock My World. He basically doesn't say anything in it. For somebody who had been in Quentin Tarantino's work, I suppose Kill Bill hadn't come out at the point that Rock My World had, but Reservoir Dogs certainly had. You know, when he was in that, he was a big name. He'd been in Donnie Brasco and different films and just wasn't used really at all. I mean, there are stories that You Rock My World, the shoot, was sort of never really completed. I don't know how true that is, which is why it sort of feels a little bit cobbled together and underbaked in the story department. Yeah, I just think to have him in You Rock My World but not be used for more dialogue or anything like that was an interesting choice on the part of the director.
Yeah, apparently Michael abandoned the shoot partway through after the big disagreement over his appearance, where they asked him to wear a prosthetic nose or some kind of mask, and the whole thing fell to pieces. If you watch the private home movies, there is actually a giant explosion, which is in the outtakes but isn't in the video. And obviously the whole thing with Brando makes no sense, where he comes in and Michael goes, "I know who you are." And you're just like, okay, who is he? You know, so I think it definitely seems like the video is unfinished and maybe Madsen was supposed to have more to do.
Bing bang.
What is that? What is it? I still don't understand what he says. Is he meant to say Big Bang? It sounds like he's saying Bing Bang. It's such a bizarre moment.
I was waiting for the bong. Bing bang bong.
Oh, God. Well, rest in peace, Michael Madsen. Thank you for your contribution to Michael's legacy in the early 2000s. In other news, a surprising legal twist is making waves in the Michael Jackson world. Frank Cascio, a longtime friend of the King of Pop, often referred to as part of Michael Jackson's second family, is being accused by the Jackson estate of attempting to extort a staggering $213 million. According to court documents, Cascio allegedly threatened to go public with damaging new claims about Jackson unless he was paid. The estate says this isn't the first time. They reportedly reached a confidential settlement with Cascio in 2020, but he's since returned with even larger demands, eventually lowering them to $44 million. In response, the estate has filed a petition to enforce the arbitration agreement from the original settlement. What makes this all the more shocking is that Cascio has publicly defended Jackson for years, including in his 2011 memoir, My Friend Michael, raising serious questions about motives, loyalty, and the legacy Michael left behind. Charlie Thomson, tell me what you think about these latest developments.
Well, I think in one sense, none of this is surprising. So obviously, back in about September last year, we learned through press reports that the Michael Jackson estate was accusing unnamed persons in a court filing of trying to extort them. What was said by John Branca in an interview with a British newspaper was that there were a group of people who came forward in the wake of leaving Neverland in 2019 and threatened that they could make allegations if they weren't paid. So the estate entered into a deal with them where it purchased the rights to their life stories, and they were each paid something in the region of $3 million each. This was 5 people. Certainly that's what was reported at the time. Those payments were made in installments, and then as soon as the payments were completed, the final installments were paid, they came back and said, "We want another $213 million. Now, there was another article written at about the same time by Stacey Brown, who's a reporter of ill repute, well known to those of us in the Michael Jackson fan world who've been following these kind of lawsuits against Michael for years, where he included information which clearly pointed to at least some of the accusers being members of the Cascio family, because he included excerpts from a book where he was saying there is a credibility issue here because one of these people has previously written a book defending Michael Jackson, and he included excerpts from that book, and they were excerpts from Frank Cascio's book. So within the fan world, we all knew immediately that this was something to do with the Cassios. What's happened now is a lawsuit, well, not a lawsuit, it's that some legal papers have been filed by the estate which have confirmed for the first time on the public record that the sort of ringleader of this development is Frank Cascio. Now, the Cassios are a family who were close to Michael for years, ever since the 1980s, traveled with him, stayed with him. Frank Cascio, when he grew up, worked for Michael for years as sort of a gopher, like an assistant. I think he has described himself in the past as Michael's manager. I'm a bit skeptical about that, because at the time he was on the scene, it was the exact same time Michael was actually being managed by Dieter and Ronald. So I'm not sure that Frank could credibly describe himself as a manager. What he was doing was procuring drugs for Michael in his name. We know that because when the sheriffs raided Neverland in late 2003, they found a lot of pill bottles with Frank's name on them. At that time, he was calling himself Frank Tyson. The Cassios have always defended Michael and are infamous in the fan community because in 2010, Eddie Cascio, Frank's brother, came forward to the estate and claimed to have a collection of unreleased songs that Michael had recorded through a tube in his basement without telling anybody, and sold them to the estate for a substantial sum of money, only for it to transpire that they were fake. So at least one member of the Cascio family has previously been involved in defrauding Michael Jackson's estate under another guise. And Frank Cascio has been implicated in that as well, because he has subsequently tried to auction CDs with those fake songs on and claim that they were Michael's copy of those fake songs. So in this new filing, which has come from the Michael Jackson estate, I'm just going to read you some excerpts of it, really, because the best way to give you the gist of what's happening is just to read you the court documents. So the documents filed by the Michael Jackson estate, although it refers to itself throughout as the Michael Jackson Company, MJC, it says, even after death, Michael Jackson's unparalleled musical and financial success continues to make his legacy a target for devious opportunists. This petition arises from a $213 million civil extortion scheme orchestrated by such opportunists. Frank and his cohorts threatened that unless they were paid substantial sums of money, they would repudiate their ardent defense of Michael and would instead go public with accusations that were completely contrary to their steadfast proclamations of his innocence. It was a shakedown. After years of enmeshing themselves in Michael's life and repeatedly debunking scandalous accusations that had been made against him by third parties, respondents decided it was their turn to profit from making specious accusations against their dear friend. They angled for substantial shakedown payments. So what they say is that in the years after Michael died, the Cassios had opportunities to profit from their association with Michael. One of those opportunities was the sale of the fake songs. Another opportunity was Frank selling his book. Another opportunity, of course, was the repeated auctions that they have held of things that they claim were Michael's property, and it's unclear how they came to be in their possession or what right they have to sell them. So they have had many opportunities over the past 10, 15 years to make money still out of their association with Michael. But according to this lawsuit, I'm using the phrase lawsuit, that's probably not quite the technical term, but just for the sake of ease. According to this lawsuit, opportunities had dried up to make money out of Michael. So they go on to say, following the 2019 release of the so-called documentary hit piece about Michael Jackson, containing numerous false allegations concerning Michael, respondents saw an opportunity to enrich themselves. Despite having a decades-long friendship with Michael Jackson and after years of passionately defending Michael against false and scurrilous allegations made by third parties, respondents decided to exploit the negative publicity following the release of the film in 2019 in order to try to profit from their own specious allegations. To do so, respondents' representative insisted on meeting with MJC's representatives at the Sunset Marquee Hotel swimming pool, wearing only bathing suits, so that MJC's representatives could not wear a wire to record the conversation. Only someone engaging in extortion or other unlawful conduct would be worried about their conversation being recorded. A truthful person asserting legitimate legal claims would have no objection to being recorded. After that meeting, this deal was struck, the deal with the rights to the life story. The payments were made over 5 years, and at the end of those 5 years, in late 2024, is when they say that Frank, with a lawyer, comes back and demands $213 million. And this coincides with news having hit the press that the Michael Jackson estate is in the middle of negotiating a circa $600 million deal to sell half of Michael's music publishing, by which I mean his own catalogue, the MyJack catalogue. Of course, the Sony ATV catalogue is already gone. So in July 2024, Frank re-emerges to demand another $213 million. Then, on August the 29th, 2024, Michael's birthday, he, through his lawyers, sends what the estate calls a menacing, extortionate threat. That threat says, quote, "We expect a substantive response by the end of day tomorrow. Otherwise, we will be forced to expand the circle of knowledge." They then go on to ask whether the people the estate are trying to sell Michael's catalogue to are aware of the situation with the Cassios, which the estate describes as a transparent threat. In October, Frank Cascio's lawyer delivers an envelope to the estate which contains, quote, "a pair of draft lawsuits riddled with outlandish, scurrilous allegations," which the estate again describes as a clear threat, effectively saying, if you don't give us the hundreds of millions of dollars we're asking for, we will publicly sue you with all sorts of terrible allegations. So, as part of the deal that was signed between the estate and the Cascio parties, and by the way, we don't know who the other Cascio parties are for sure. The only person that's been named is Frank.
I'm fairly sure the document mentions 10 unnamed people, but there's not 10 people in the Cascio family, I don't think.
That's very likely to be spouses. So it's likely to be the Cascio parents, the Cascio siblings, and the Cascio sibling spouses.
Right.
Which includes James Port, of course.
Yes. Frank and Eddie's sister, Marie Nicole, is married to James Port, who was Eddie's collaborator on the fake songs. Yes, so when this deal was entered into, part of the deal was that any future disputes between the estate and any parties to this agreement would have to be litigated through arbitration. And we saw a similar thing with the HBO case. So when the estate sued HBO for breach of contract over the airing of Leaving Neverland because they said it breached the non-disparagement clause in an old contract between Michael Jackson and HBO, that went to arbitration instead of going through court. And that's because the agreement that was signed between Michael at the time and HBO said, if anybody has any disputes about this contract, it doesn't go to court, it goes to arbitration. Arbitration is effectively a private process which circumvents the public court process, whereby your dispute will be mitigated by a retired judge, usually. So when Frank came back and started demanding hundreds of millions of dollars of extra money, the estate said, you can't do this. You have to go through the arbitration process. You have signed a contract which says any future dispute between us must be dealt with through arbitration. So since last summer, the estate has been filing papers to effectively get the court to force Frank Cascio, his lawyer, to go through the arbitration process. And what they're saying in this new legal filing is that they are essentially refusing to do that. Now, Frank has recently dispensed with the lawyer who was representing him and replaced that lawyer with Mark Geragos, of all people. Now, anybody who is familiar with Michael's trial and that whole era, sort of 2003 to 5, will remember that Mark Geragos was Michael's lawyer. at the beginning of the Arvizo case. Now, he's now working for the Cassios, which seems to be a gigantic conflict of interest, not least because Geragos is on record many times saying how clearly innocent Michael is. So he has described Michael Jackson in the past as 100% innocent. And he said Michael was so obviously innocent that a first-year law student could have won the 2005 trial, and said that he was so convinced of Michael's innocence that he allowed his own son to repeatedly visit Neverland. He's now representing Frank Cascio. And as you mentioned, Jamon, this dispute has dragged on now for the best part of a year. Frank has got nowhere, and most recently they have come back and said, okay, give us $44 million and we'll go away. And they are now threatening to file a public lawsuit, which the estate says is full of outlandish, scurrilous allegations. That would be a breach of contract if they did that, but of course, by the time that was dealt with, that lawsuit would already be on the public record, and all of those allegations would become reportable in the media. So it is even though it's a breach of contract and Frank would ultimately be hauled over the coals, effectively the threat of the negative publicity is so great, I think, that they're banking on the estate being willing to crumble and pay them off to avoid it. But instead, the estate has gone on the attack, which is what it did last summer with that interview Branca gave to the press. And effectively, they're coming out fighting and saying, no, we are not going to be held over a barrel like this. If this is the way you want to play, we're going to come at you first. And so they have filed this legal filing as a shot across the bow, effectively. So that's where we're up to so far. Any questions?
I don't know about questions. Maybe there'll be some questions that come as part of this. I just cannot believe the barefaced cheek of this family and how they've been, certainly in the last few years, but since Michael's passing. I freely admit that I was completely duped by Frank Cascio's book when it first came out. I bought it, I read it, I thought, what a great guy. I then saw him on TV interviews defending Michael Jackson. I thought, right, well, this is really good, someone so close to Michael speaking the truth. And it turns out that you couldn't trust him as far as you could throw him. And that goes for pretty much any member of the Cascio family that we know has dealt with Michael. You obviously can't assume who those 10 names are, but we have a good idea. We can't come out here and say that it absolutely is these people, but we could have a good idea that it's maybe the siblings and their spouses, as Charlie just said. It's interesting to me that that includes people like James Port and Eddie Cascio, obviously being Frank's brother, because of what they got up to with the fake songs. And they are fake, they're provable fakes. And I'm wondering how this might tie into any... I mean, I'm sure that there are agreements in place between the estate and Eddie Cascio already regarding those songs that probably prevents them taking any further action. But we know from Damien's podcast, for example, that they've engaged in criminal activity or fraudulent activity, I should say, by filing multiple versions of these songs with the Copyright Office, which itself is an offence. And then to learn that not only have they got the barefaced cheek to do all of this, try and demand $213 million, which is just obscene, but they then engage Mark Geragos as their lawyer, trying to bolster their own credibility, perhaps. And I'm surprised that Mark Geragos even took the case. But it also might explain something. I'm not sure if this is something that we'll put out there in public or not, Jamon. We tried to interview Mark Geragos. We set the date and had him all ready to go. And on the day of the recording, he just didn't show up. Now, I don't know how that ties in with the dates where he started to represent Frank Cascio, but that could be related to that. That's just a conjecture on my part. But I just don't understand how they think that they can go from saying what they said all those years ago and being backed up with the facts to now threatening to expose a lie unless they're paid. It just doesn't make sense to me that any human being could be such a prick.
This is the guy. I didn't think he could go any lower than trying to auction off Michael's dirty underwear.
Yeah.
But it looks like he is managing to do just that.
Auctioning off Michael's dirty underwear, tried to claim that he had Michael's personal copy of songs that were recorded after he died, on a CD that was manufactured after he passed away. I don't understand what the hell he's thinking, and what the hell are Dominic and Connie Cascio doing in all of this. Surely they would have said to their sons at some point, "Come on, boys, reel your necks in."
Yeah, this is the thing that surprises me, is that all members of the Cascio family seem to be sticking to this situation. Not one of them has broken away and done an interview somewhere saying, my family are crossing a line. Michael was a great guy. I find that to be surprising. It's interesting that all of them are unified around this lie.
Yeah, I mean, I guess all they can see at the end of it is a dollar sign. The bag with a dollar sign on it and the cartoon sack of money. $213 million. What makes them think they deserve that? That's almost as, if not more outlandish than Wade Robson saying that he was on a trajectory to make him the greatest artist in the history of entertainment.
Yeah.
It just beggars belief that, as much as it's bad, if they'd have come in and asked for maybe like 5 or 6 million, they may well have, I can't opine that, but $213 million is an outlandish number. And then to turn around and say, well, actually, if you offer us 44 million, we'll say okay and we'll just sweep it under the carpet. Fuck off.
I would just say, I think Geragos only started representing Frank and the other claimants less than a year ago. So I don't think it's connected to the Geragosting situation that we experienced a few years ago, where we literally were sat here ready to record the episode, just wondering when he was going to log in and record it, and he just never showed up and never responded to our messages saying, what happened? Did you forget the date? Do you want to reschedule? It was just a complete ghosting. But yeah, I don't know quite what that was about. Interestingly, Roger Friedman wrote a story about this a couple of days ago, where he was a lot less enthusiastic about the Cascio songs than he has been in the past. And he did say that one of the Cascio kids had recently died. He has actually deleted that from the article. I've just double-checked it, and it's now gone. So yeah, that's interesting, and I'm not sure what that's about. I don't know if he got it wrong or if he's had some sort of complaint and deleted it because it was distressing.
Well, of course we don't wish death on any of them, and if that turns out to be the case, then it's obviously very sad. Let's not conflate the issue here. It's the Cascio family making outlandish claims for obscene amounts of money that are not deserved is what we should be focusing on here.
What the article originally said was the 5 Cascio children are Frank, Eddie, Dominic Jr., Aldo, and Marie Nicole. Dominic Cascio has recently passed away. That sentence, Dominic Cascio has recently passed away, that's now been deleted from the story, but I don't know why it's been deleted.
Fascinating.
That could be referring to the father, couldn't it?
It could well be referring to the father. Either way, yeah, you're right, actually, because there's Dominic and Dominic Jr. It could be either one of them, actually, that he's saying passed away. But whoever he was referring to, for some reason, he has deleted that from the article.
All right, fellas, let's carry on. Michael Jackson's daughter, Paris Jackson, has formally raised questions about the estate's financial management. She's particularly troubled by over $625,000 in what she's calling premium payments made in 2018 to 3 law firms for undocumented attorney time. In her June 24th filing, Paris argues the payouts were lavish gratitudes made without proper billing or timely court approval. She's demanding a detailed accounting and schedule for outstanding fee approvals. The estate, however, maintains the payments were well-deserved and reasonable, crediting the attorney's pivotal role in generating over $287 million from the estate's 2018 catalogue sale. A hearing was set for July 16th, just a few days ago. We're not sure really how that's played out. We haven't heard anything around that. It'll be interesting when information starts to come out around how that went. To my knowledge, this is the first time I mean, Paris has had a history in the past of challenging decisions by the estate, particularly up until a few years ago where she started to get into her own music career. She seems to have gotten quite busy with that sort of thing. So it's not the first time she's really challenged them. I know she went on the record challenging the estate over the fake songs situation back in, I don't know when she did that, but it would have been soon after 2010, if not in 2010. It's good to see, I think, Michael's children starting again to challenge some of these decisions being made by the estate. A lot of fans over the years have had questions about their payments. There is obviously a lot of, I guess, in my opinion, conflict of interest around John Brancar and his position in the estate and how much money he reaps from the continual lawsuits that never seem to stop.
Given that Paris is a beneficiary of the estate, she has every right to ask for an audit to be carried out and explanations to be given for every single payment made to or from the accounts of the Michael Jackson estate. I think she's absolutely well within her rights. I think there needs to be transparency for the beneficiaries. I'm not necessarily strongly of the opinion that these findings should be made public, but if a beneficiary or a family member that's specifically named as a beneficiary wants to have some transparency on that, then I'm all for it, and I wish Paris all the best with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm struggling to envisage Paris poring over the accounts of the Michael Jackson estate, and I'm wondering whether this is actually something that a lawyer has brought to her and suggested that she challenge. I think part of the issue, based on my reading of the court documents, is that conflicting explanations have been given as to the nature of these payments. So at one time they have been described as a charge for hours that were worked, which should have been billed in the beginning, but they forgot to bill them. But another time it's been described as effectively a performance-related bonus. That seems to have caused a bit of suspicion, the fact that there's two different explanations for the charges. That figure you read out a short while ago, Jamon, is quite stark, 200 and something million just in 2018 from the sale of one asset. There is one school of thought of like, why are you quibbling over 600 grand? Do you know what I mean? But, it's not going to bankrupt you. But, yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. But it is a bit unfortunate that it's playing out in public, but it doesn't seem to have got much traction. Even the Cascio thing hasn't got much traction, but I think personally that's because the behavior involved is so clearly discrediting that there really is just no way for the press to make it sound credible. I mean, if they thought they could make it sound credible, I'm sure they would be doing that en masse, but it would require such somersaults to try and justify and explain what's going on in that case. Yeah, I mean, we would just have to follow this and see what happens. It could be that these are completely legitimate charges. Lawyers of this stature and caliber can charge thousands of dollars a day. That's what they're worth to their clients because they get business done. So and as you said, Jamon, they're generating hundreds of millions with the deals that they're negotiating. So this may all be a bit of a storm in a teacup. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, but I want to echo Carter. Like, I in one way, I think this is fairly healthy, right? You want to see a little bit of, if there are questions being raised regarding payments, it's healthy that the beneficiary should be able to raise questions about that. I think this is a good thing.
I think that's very true. And part of Paris's complaint, according to the legal papers, is that she raised these concerns a year ago and does not feel that she's received satisfactory explanation. So if that's the case, then yeah, fair enough.
Let's switch gears a little bit now, and Charlie Carter will talk about something that you discovered recently and wrote a blog post about up at the MJCast.com. You stumbled upon a bit of an exclusive with MJ the Musical. Do you want to talk us through that?
I did, yeah, sure. So completely by accident, I managed to find out an exclusive that MJ the Musical, which is currently residing here in Sydney, was going to be moving to Melbourne. I have been to see the show twice. A colleague of mine at work, she said, look, we got tickets for this weekend, whatever weekend it was, but they couldn't go. Would we like them? There's a website called Today Tix where we managed to get cheaper tickets. So I messaged my wife, Jess, and said, hey, do you want to go this weekend? And she was like, sure, but can I pay for them as your birthday present? I went, yeah, no worries. Not a problem to me. So we did that, and we took those tickets off my colleague, only for Jess to later check her emails that day and find that she'd also won tickets for a show later that week. So we ended up going twice in the same week. And so I was in the middle of writing a review to go up on the MJCast website when I was in conversation with a friend from a completely different field, nothing to do with MJ, and he had some inside knowledge, let's say, not just that the musical was moving to Melbourne, but that it was going to a certain theatre, which was Her Majesty's Theatre in Melbourne, and that the announcement was going to be made the following week. So I said, well, do you mind if I incorporate that into my review and we'll stick it up on the MJCast website? And it came just off the back of an article by Pez on MJ Vibe, where he'd sort of opined that MJ the Musical was leaving Sydney because it wasn't as popular as they'd hoped. I just left a comment on that just to say, look, it's not that people don't want to go and see it. It's just that they physically have to leave that theatre at the end of August to make way for, I think it's Back to the Future, the musical that's moving in. And literally within 24, 48 hours, the announcement came that it was moving to Melbourne after I released that blog post. So I felt pretty good to have got an exclusive like that, especially as the resident journalist at the MJCast is Charlie Thomson. So, I was pretty happy with that. And it all happened by chance, just a conversation with a friend from a completely different field who just happened to have inside knowledge of the logistics that were happening to get the crew down to Melbourne.
Well done. Very, very good stuff. And you've shared all of your thoughts, which was a great read, by the way, in your review blog post. But yeah, do you just want to sum up for us now what you thought of it?
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about it on the show a few times. Charlie's been to see it, and Elise has been to see it as well. And I had to watch the show through two different lenses. Yeah, just purely because of my fandom of Michael Jackson, I had to look at it through someone who's just going to a musical and enjoying a musical, and then I obviously look at it through the lens of a Michael Jackson fan. And either way I look at it, it's still a great show, but there are the obvious inaccuracies in there, like, okay, this is set in the lead up to the Dangerous Tour in 1992, so why are they including songs like Earth Song, Too Bad, They Don't Care About Us, Money, Stranger in Moscow, Tabloid Junkie, which, all weren't released until 3 years after this musical is set.
Mm-hmm.
And then, some timeline issues like using Don't Stop Till You Get Enough during a section where Childhood Michael was on stage. I mean, the biggest criticism that the media seems to have of the show is that it doesn't address the allegations. And there is a throwaway line about, and who is this family he's bringing on tour? But overall, I thought it was a really, really good show. It wasn't necessarily meant to address the allegations, so that's just nitpicking from the media that have had a go at it. And Derek Davis, who plays Joseph Jackson / manager, I thought he did it really, really well. I thought he was one of my highlights outside of the people that played Michael of the show. And the lady that played Catherine had an absolutely stunning voice. So it's definitely worth a watch. If you're in Sydney, you'll be able to watch it until the 23rd of August. That's the final show here in Sydney. And then in September, it'll open down in Melbourne. So if you're in Australia and you haven't seen it, make sure that you get down to see it while you can.
Very good. Love it.
In London, the show has now extended to 2 years. So it's now running to spring 2026. And they have just announced some kind of special event in, I think, September, where all sort of midweek tickets are going to be substantially reduced, which is something that a lot of shows do just at times of the year when it's difficult to shift tickets. I haven't seen the new guy yet, so I can't comment on whether he's any good. There's been quite a few cast changes in London, so it might be worth going and checking it out if you've not been yet while that deal is on.
Yeah, and like I say, if you are in Australia, make sure you go and see it, because especially if you've got Roman Banks playing Michael Jackson, he is fantastic. If if you're a bit further away from the stage, you lose yourself in a moment thinking it is Michael Jackson.
All right. So in other news, it is History 30. We are celebrating 30 years of the History album. And as per usual with the Michael Jackson estate, they have decided to not do a whole lot about this. I don't even know if there's any merch stuff. Remember when they did Dangerous 25 or something, where they just put out some T-shirts instead of actually recognizing the album? I don't even know if they're doing that this time for History 30. As per usual, the fan community is picking up the slack here a little bit. And we've received a pretty amazing roundtable discussion on YouTube and through podcast apps as well. Friend of the show, Brad Sundberg, and studio collaborator with Michael Jackson and host of In the Studio with MJ, the traveling seminar, has released a video collaborator roundtable in honor of History 30, where he and 3 other studio engineers get together to talk about their time working on the album. So the people on the roundtable are Matt Forger, Rob Hoffman, and Tony Black. It's almost 2 hours long, which is awesome because you just get completely immersed in, the history sessions and a lot of the stories from behind the scenes. It's got some great stories from all the participants. One thing that really, really stood out for me listening back through it is the camaraderie between these studio collaborators and, the different things they had to go through behind the scenes to make the album possible. It actually, it does obviously have some really good Michael stories in there as well, and I won't spoil any of those. But why you would want to listen to this is to learn about the cast of characters that worked on the album behind the scenes. So people you don't get to hear about very much. Not just the 3 guys that are talking with Brad, but also their memories and recollections of Bruce Swedien, different other engineers that worked on the album like Andrew Sheps, and different folks that I would love to speak to one day, actually. But it's fantastic. They tell some really funny stories. There's one particular story about how they all went out to like a bar after recording Michael during the day, and they'd all signed non-disclosures saying they weren't allowed to tell anybody about the album or Michael or anything like that. And they got to the bar, and some of them were trying to be really like discreet because they were chatting to a couple of women who were at the bar, and they were really interested in what the guys were doing. And they asked, what do you do? And they were saying, well, we're studio engineers. And then one of them just couldn't hold back and blurted out that he works with Michael Jackson. And it was, just a really funny story to hear. So there's lots of things like that behind the scenes, what was going on in New York and LA as they were recording. There's lots of information about different people who were coming in and out of the studio, whether it be Teddy Riley or David Foster or whoever. Really, really well worth a listen, and I'd recommend checking it out. Just a heads up, it is very, very heavy on studio equipment talk. So, and I love that stuff. Like, not that I understand a lot of it, but it's really great to hear just the technicality and the level of expertise that these guys have. It's no wonder that Michael chose to work with so many of them, because they were very clearly the front runners in their field. And so it is absolutely worth listening to. There is some interesting stuff at the start, which I felt not saying it wasn't explained very well, but it's something I want to learn more about. The guys were talking about, some different politics and drama between the different people working on the album. And at one point, Rob was talking about being let go and then by Michael, and then Matt Forger having to go and have a meeting with Michael to get Rob back on the project, and then that happening. And there was a lot of things discussed that made sense to the fellas, but I think that there's still a story the community don't really understand. I think at some point it would be great to learn about it, whether it be through a book or something. I mean, there's obviously a lot that went on during these recording sessions. And to them, I think sometimes the engineers treated it a little like, oh, it's just drama that we had to deal with that was happening at the time. But I think to the Michael community, it's really fascinating to learn the story of, from the start to the finish of the project unfolding and all the different cast of characters and what happened and what worked and what didn't work and how things were brought back together. So I think at some point in the future, that was just that whole section where they were talking about the drama between people and how Michael was interacting with that. That was so fascinating to me. And I would love at some point to learn more about that, just as a fan to learn about how the album really came together, I guess. But yeah, it was a great listen. Did you guys have a chance to listen at all?
Yeah, I agree. I listened to it just recently, and I actually also liked that story of the lack of confidentiality as they went out on the town in New York. You know, one guy saying, "What do you?" Being asked by one of the girls, "What do you do for a living?" "Oh, I'm a recording studio engineer." And then the other guy, "Oh, I work for Michael Jackson." You're like, and they just completely ignore him and turn their back on him, and they're interested in I forget I think it was Mr. Black that just blurted it out. But yeah, no, overall, it was a pretty good listen. It's pretty interesting to hear some of the stories from inside the studio. And obviously, I was lucky enough to go to Brad's seminar earlier this year, and it was fantastic to experience that. If you haven't been to one of Brad's seminars, make sure you get along. He's a very friendly bloke, and had a great time with him. And that podcast is also available on YouTube. You can watch it as an episode as well. I listened to it in the car, but I might actually go through it and watch it on YouTube again.
I've not had a chance to listen to or watch this yet, but I was just talking to Brad right before we recorded this episode, and he was telling me that in September he'll be back in London with his seminar. So any UK-based fans, pencil that in. I think he said the weekend of the 20th of September, although I'm not 100% sure that's what he said. But pencil it in. Don't pen it in. Pencil it in. And keep your eyes peeled for an announcement in the coming days.
Sounds good. Awesome. Yes. Well, I encourage all of our listeners to go and check that out. It's also really good for just understanding or painting a visual picture of what the history recording sessions were like. One thing that stands out for me from the episode is how detailed they are in describing Sony Studios in New York City, with all the different rooms and who was moving between what rooms and what was going on. And like the way they describe it is each room was devoted to like a different production team. Like Brad Buxer was in one room, Bruce Swedien was in another room, and the engineers were sort of moving between each of these rooms, working with different teams. So it is fantastic to listen to. There's also a couple of little nuggets of information in there, exclusive information really, about potential songs that we haven't heard yet from certain producers, which I found very interesting. So I think his name is Renee Moore, who was a songwriter who worked with Bruce Swedien, who we've never had the chance to speak with yet. But they kind of divulged that there's quite a lot of tracks that he worked on with Michael that people haven't heard yet. I don't know if they have vocals. They don't go into those kind of details. But yeah, there are a few moments in the show where they talk about certain producers who were working with Michael who, like, tracks that didn't make the album. Babyface is another one. Apparently Michael did a bunch of work with Babyface for that album that hasn't been heard. So really, really cool information.
Yeah, and that recording session in New York, I mean, you're right about there being different rooms dedicated to different producers. And one of my favorite parts of Brad's seminar, and unfortunately it is also on YouTube, it's leaked on YouTube as well, but I suppose it's fortunate to give you the chance to listen to it, is when Michael was recording the vocals for Childhood, or scratch that, actually he was asked to provide vocals to Childhood while the orchestra played the music to give them something to refer to. And it's just a beautiful scene, and it's given me a much bigger appreciation just for that song and how beautiful the composition is.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think a lot of us would have seen that video now at this point. To witness Michael's genius in that way, delivering those vocals with such passion, just the expression on his face as he sings those vocals. It is. I feel a bit guilty watching it in one way because it was such an important part of Brad's seminar, and now I feel like, you know, I've seen it having come out in sort of dubious circumstances with that thief stealing the footage from Brad. Like, I feel bad watching it, but I can't deny it's just incredible to watch as well.
Yeah, it certainly gives it a different dimension when you're at Brad's seminar to see that clip and hear him talk about it and give it some context.
Okay, moving right along. So in other Michael Jackson news, we've got a new claim from a rapper called Lil Baby saying that there will be a new Michael Jackson feature on his upcoming album. I've not heard of this particular artist before. I know that they're popular and they're, well, this article by MJ Vibe talks about them topping the charts and everything, and I'm sure they are, but I don't know much about them. I can't even recall one of their songs, but apparently Lil Baby is saying that on his new album coming, Michael Jackson will be on it in some fashion. It was revealed in a live stream with somebody called Aiden Ross. Details are vague. The album's coming out in August. I have no idea about whether it's going to be just a sample of a previously released vocal or some instrumentation from a Michael song, or whether we'll be getting the whole what was that song Drake did that's got Michael vocals in it? What was that called again?
Don't Matter to Me was the song that they used, I think.
Yeah, so it might be another thing like that where the estate kind of seed some unreleased, like a vocal hook or something to them. We just don't know, but I guess we'll find out in August.
Yes, I will excitedly wait for that.
Are you a big Lil Baby fan? Are you,
huge,
Charlie?
Huge.
Carter, are you?
I have to confess that I'm not a connoisseur of Mr. Baby's work, but I look forward to it with glee.
All right, let's chat about 3T. So the brothers are touring again, which is great because they took a few years away from the stage, I think, with certainly Tarrell and TJ focusing on their own solo careers, and then Taj working on the documentary, which we're all looking forward to. The fellas have got back together and are currently touring Europe. I think they did their first show in Casablanca in Morocco. Some good footage of that coming out on various Instagram accounts. But they still have, well, actually their next one is, I think might be...
I'd love to go to Toulouse anyway, but to see 3T in action there would be fantastic. Last time I spoke to Taj, he was really looking forward to this. He said it's not necessarily a tour. It's part of a group of festivals that they were playing at, but he was really excited to do it, and hopefully it leads to some kind of tour. So fingers crossed that that's the case. I was listening to Brotherhood yesterday, actually.
Yeah, and from memory, wasn't he saying as well they were working on another album? They were pretty deep into production on that, so it might all tie in together into a new era for 3T. Didn't they collaborate with their dad?
Yes, they. I think Taj told us on the Christmas episode that they had recorded with Tito. Was it the Christmas episode, or did we record with him?
No, it was the Christmas one. Yeah.
Yes, and I thought they were playing 3 shows in France rather than 2, but maybe I've got that wrong. But I think that the hope is that next year there will be a bigger tour for their 30th anniversary.
Yeah, so there was 1 show in Morocco and then 2 shows in France.
Okay, yeah, I may have been confused.
All right, let's jump onto our final news item before we hear all about Charlie's adventures in America. This one is a pretty big one. So one of Michael's key collaborators that he worked with on multiple albums, on Dangerous, on Blood on the Dance Floor, on Invincible, was, of course, Teddy Riley, music producer Teddy Riley. And he has been teasing for many years, going back to really the start of the MJCast, that he would be releasing a book about his life and his work with various artists, including Michael Jackson. And this book is now definitely coming out. If you follow our show notes, it'll take you to the press release and website from the publisher. And the book is called Remember the Times, and it will be coming out on February 10th, 2026. I am particularly fascinated in this, of course, because not just from all the stories that he had or would have working with Michael, which I'm just so fascinated to hear, because he's someone that is an interesting guy, because when you watch his interviews, he does have a lot of detail about the process of recording songs, and particularly gear and equipment and that kind of stuff. But you don't really get this, I don't listen to his interviews walking away with a lot of stories about Michael himself. So Teddy's very focused on the songwriting and the engineering and the production and the music. But I'm hoping that this book might reveal some stories of his collaborative partnership and friendship with Michael. I think there's a good chance for us as fans to learn a bit more about Michael and Teddy's work with Michael there. They obviously did some really great stuff together, and Michael, loved his work. But then you've also got the side of Teddy Riley, of his involvement with the first posthumous album, the Michael album, and the Cascio tracks. He was obviously a very important part of that whole story, as you can hear in Damien Shield's excellent Faking Michael podcast. We've had bits and pieces over the years from Teddy Riley. I've spoken with Teddy Riley, and he has changed his story over the years from supporting those songs and supporting the Cascio tracks, famously on Oprah, to being publicly against them and calling them certain names that I won't repeat on the show today, but definitely being against the songs and Eddie Cascio in particular, and divulging publicly that he was taken advantage of. So I'm curious how much he talks about that in his memoirs. I think it's a very important part of his overall story, and kind of a sad part of his story, really, when you think about it, because before 2010, especially when Teddy was doing interviews, I remember he was interviewed by, I can't remember what news station, but it was whatever channel in America was broadcasting Michael's memorial, and Teddy was interviewed during the memorial. And I just remember watching that at the time and thinking how awesome it was for Michael to have such a great friend and supporter and collaborative partner who was willing to go on the news and talk so positively about their creative work together. And he was kind of like held up as a hero of the Michael community. He was able to bring Michael into a whole new era. That's the thing with Teddy, is Michael had a very specific sound with Quincy Jones throughout the 80s, and Teddy was the person who was able to bring Michael into the 90s and give Michael a completely fresh, new Jack Swing sound for a whole new generation. He really gave Michael a whole new decade of success, I think, with this sound. And the fans viewed him as a hero in the community. And that sort of changed in a split second when Breaking News came out and he went on Oprah and all of that kind of thing. So it's kind of a sad story. Also, we've spoken with people who knew Teddy Riley very closely. Like, by all accounts, Tarrell Jackson was one of Teddy's closest friends. I think Tarrell might have even described him to us as his best friend. And that, relationship obviously soured and went very, very sad very quickly when Tarrell went public with his thoughts about Teddy's involvement with the Cascio tracks. So I don't know whether all of this will be in the memoirs. There's a chance for him to tell the real story of what happened.
Unfortunately for me, unless Teddy comes clean completely in this book and accepts what we all know from his manager, who tells the story very vividly in Faking Michael, Damien and James's podcast, unless he comes clean and tells the full story honestly, the whole book will be tainted for me, because I just think back to the trial, when Tom Mesereau was giving his closing argument at Michael's trial, and he said to the jury, if you find that a witness has lied to you about anything, you must not accept anything else that they told you while they were on the stand. And that's kind of how I feel when I'm listening to people talking about Michael. If I know that you're lying about part of what you're telling me, I cannot invest in anything else that you're telling me. I cannot assume that anything else you're telling me is worth knowing or is true. So the whole validity of the book for me is going to hinge on whether he comes clean and tells the truth about that whole 2010 fake songs debacle. And if he's not holding his hands up and telling the full story and telling it completely honestly, then I'm I just have absolutely no interest in anything else that he has to say about Michael, be it about the Dangerous album, the History album, or anything else.
Yeah, I think in his most recent interviews, for example, the Vlad TV interview that he did on YouTube, I think it might have been a couple of years ago now, 1 or 2 years ago. Like every time he talks about the Cascio situation, he's more and more clear, I think, with what happened. I don't think he's got to the point yet where he's talked about it candidly from his point of view, but I do think there's a chance that he'll be more honest and forthcoming. But there is the chance as well that he'll just not mention it because he's still active in the recording industry and there's bridges that he probably doesn't want to burn. So I think there is a risk too, like you're sort of saying, that we might get this book and who knows, he might just not even mention it in it. That would be a shame. I'd agree. If the book comes out and it's telling mistruths or it's not mentioned in it, it will ruin the book for me as well.
I have to say, gents, that for me, when I first saw that this book was coming out, there was two things that struck me. One was the choice of title, Remember the Times. Well, there's already a book about Michael Jackson out called Remember the Time, which is Bill Whitfield and Javon Beard's book. So there's a lack of originality in the title there. And secondly, I think Charlie hit the nail on the head when he said, if there's going to be any credibility at all to what Teddy Riley has to say, he has to come fully clean with what happened with the Cascio tracks. He has to. Otherwise, he just won't have any credibility whatsoever, especially in the Michael Jackson community. Now, I do understand that this book isn't necessarily only about his work with Michael Jackson. It's about his own life and career. For us and people who are aware of the story with the Cascio tracks, many of us are going to fast forward to that part and just see what's written there. I also agree with what you said about perhaps he won't even address it at all because he does still work in the music industry and perhaps there are some legal non-disclosure agreements that may have been signed in the background which prevent him from talking about it. In which case, I think that marketing this book as a tell-all is also misleading because he's not going to talk about what we all really want to hear about. So I'm not really too sure what to make of this. I'll be curious. I'm not going to buy it straight up, and I'll wait to hear what's contained in it before I even think about it. Or if I do get it, it will probably be through one of those free vouchers through Audible or something where you get a free book and have a listen to it. But I don't think it's going to be as heavy on what we want to hear about his time with Michael Jackson as we hope.
Yeah, I think really when we're thinking about the Cascio tracks in particular, it is such an important story, and I'm glad the full story's been told in Damien's podcast. But I think we also need to remember that it's only a very small portion, I think, of the Michael community that will want to know that or understand that. Because even if he mentions it in the book, which I hope he does, and he needs to, I don't think your general Michael fan or music fan who's buying this book is necessarily going to even understand what that album was or the significance of that album, and I guess that's why it's so important that Damien's work is out.
Yeah, you're right.
I think most Michael Jackson fans are probably going to want to get it to learn more about his involvement with Michael over the years and the stories behind the Dangerous album in particular. I mean, the book's called Remember the Time because that's, probably the most important song that he produced for Michael. I think it's called Remember the Times, as in plural, because I was looking at some, actually there's an auction happening at the moment that MJ Vibe's talking about, and there's some lyrics. There's a lyric sheet, I think, published, that you can buy at the auction, and it is for the song Remember the Time. I think it was originally called Remember the Times, because that's what it says at the top of the lyric sheet, but maybe that's why he's called the book that. I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, we'll again extend an invitation to Teddy to come on the MJCast if you'd like to. I've spoken to him off and on over the years, and there have been times where he definitely has indicated that he'd like to come on the show, and there's been times that he hasn't responded. So I'll again reach out to him to see if he'd like to come on. I do think that there is a chance here for Teddy, for there to be a real redemption story here for Teddy. I mean, there's no two ways about it. The guy screwed up, he absolutely did.
I think he knows that he screwed up too. I think that there's that consciousness that he, made a mistake. So from that point of view, I think that's why a lot of the people who are aware of the Cascio track story are willing to give Teddy another chance to explain what happened, and they're hoping for that. So Teddy, if you are listening, do come on to the MJCast, have a speak to us. I really think that you've got a great chance here to put the record straight and to stop anything like this from ever happening again.
100% agree. Yeah, it does pain me a little bit for his legacy, and it's all by his own choice. It is just disappointing that his whole legacy with Michael is sort of overshadowed by the choices that he made in 2010, when he is such an important figure in Michael's overall musical career, especially in the last portion of his career. All right, so that's the end of our news section for this episode. And now we'll hand over to Charlie Thomson to listen to some cool stories. You've been out and about traveling again, Charlie.
I have. I mean, I don't want to just wang on about my holiday. I'm not conceited enough to think that everybody wants a blow-by-blow account of my holiday. But I was out in Los Angeles for 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of June. I was supposed to go in August, and I had tickets to the Fool in Love Music Festival, which was this huge kind of soul and funk music festival in Los Angeles, which had an amazing lineup, and I was very much looking forward to going. And unfortunately, my dad became catastrophically ill, and I had to cancel the entire trip. And so what I was able to salvage of the trip got moved to June this year. So essentially I was going for no reason, because there was no longer a music festival to attend that had happened. So it was just the sort of what I was able to save of the trip. Yeah, I mean, I'll be guided by you really as to what you want to know about, but I did a lot of MJ related sightseeing, some of which I've done before and some of which I've not. Ended up in Skid Row. So there's a cafe which purports to be the cafe where the Beat It music video was filmed. It's not the cafe where the Beat It music video was filmed. It's kind of like a tribute thing. It's like a sort of a tribute to the Beat It cafe, but it is not the cafe where the Beat It video was filmed, much as it likes to pretend that it is. In fact, the Beat It video was filmed in a building called the Special Cafe, which is a couple of blocks away and is now in the heart, the epicenter of Skid Row in downtown Los Angeles. And so I met up with my friend Konstantinos, who was intent on trying to find out a bit more about Beat It filming locations, and ended up taking us to Skid Row. We parked, probably a 10-minute walk away, and he told us to leave all our valuables in the car. And we ended up walking round to Skid Row, which was not a pleasant experience, let me tell you. People, I hope they were unconscious, because if they weren't unconscious, they were dead, laying in the street. We did find the Special Cafe, which is the cafe where Beat It was actually filmed, which is now a homeless hostel. Which, of course, Konstantinos wanted us to enter and see if we could find anyone that could tell us anything about the filming of the Beat It video, which I was pretty certain was not going to happen, and as it turned out, did not happen. So we went in and ended up encountering a woman who was heavily pregnant and heavily under the influence of some kind of hard drugs, who was not making a lot of sense, and I basically just legged it, wanted to get the hell out of there as quickly as possible. We did find another Beat It filming location. You know where the shutters come up towards the end and all the gang members enter the warehouse?
Oh, yeah, the warehouse type thing. Yeah.
Yeah, we found that. That's now a sports shop, which is probably about a 5-minute drive from Skid Row. So you're pretty safe if you want to go to that little location there. We did the Thriller House, of course, which is really interesting. I can't remember the name of that street, but I can find it and we'll put it in the show notes. But it's like a really weird street where every single house is different and they all look like they've been built by Dick Dastardly or something. They're all kind of weird higgledy-piggledy wooden houses. incredibly beautiful, some of them massive and really ornate, but weird. We went to the street where Thriller was filmed. That's extremely boring. It's literally just a street. We went to the theatre where Ola and Michael walk out, which is just a theatre. One place we did end up, because Constantinos, our friend who lives out there, he is a delivery driver. That's one of his jobs, right? And he frequently delivers to celebrities. So he'll go off to deliver a grocery order or something, and Halle Berry will open the door, or John Legend or something. So he was taking us on a tour all around the Hollywood Hills and just saying, "Oh, this is Michael Bublé's house. This is whoever." We ended up at the first house where the Jackson 5 ever lived when they moved to Los Angeles, which actually I had attempted to visit on my last trip to Los Angeles. And then just as we arrived, a car screeched up alongside us, and a woman inside just said, "Someone's been shot, get out of here." And so we just had to leave immediately. What else? Oh yeah, Ennis House. So we went to a place called Ennis House, which is a really strange looking building up in the Hollywood Hills, which has been used as a location in umpteen things for filming. Most famously, probably the House on Haunted Hill with Vincent Price, but it's also the filming location for Why, the music video Why.
Right.
So we looked it up because we were like, "Oh, I wonder if you can go in," which you can't. We looked it up, and it's, guess who owns it? Ron Burkle.
There you go.
He owns everything. So it turns out he's owned that for donkey's years. And there was a flag flying from the building upside down, an American Stars and Stripes flag, but flying upside down, which we looked up, and apparently that's a sign that whoever owns the building is objecting to the behavior of the government of the day. So good on Ron. Went to the Grammy Museum. They've still got a whole exhibition of Michael's stuff there that's worth going to check out. I guess the next thing we did that would be MJ related was when we went to Vegas and saw MJ1. Carter, have you seen MJ1? Have you been to Vegas and seen it?
Yes, I have, yeah.
What were your views on MJ1?
Oh, look, it's 2019 was when we went over to see it, so the memory is a little bit hazy. I do remember coming out of it thinking that at that time, the version of Billie Jean that they did was one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen live on stage. With the multicolored, the lights changing on the pants and the moon walking up the walls and stuff like that. I thought it was very entertaining and very well done. But as for the rest of the show, I seem to remember that there was some kind of really sad and emotional parts which sort of remind you of Michael's loss, but of his extraordinary talent. But it's probably, it's 100% going to be more fresh in your memory. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a kind of a weird one for me. After we left, I found out that apparently it had a story. Who knew? What that story was unclear, to put it mildly. Apparently the story is that some kind of demonic figures, possibly journalists, but it's not really clear, have somehow stolen Michael Jackson's essence, which is represented in the show by his hat, glove, and socks and shoes, I think, and are corrupting his essence to damage his legacy. And so a group of unidentified individuals, I don't know what their relevance is, they decide to go and rescue Michael's legacy, and we're kind of following their journey, apparently. It really does not make sense. That's not made clear at all. And to be honest, even after it had been explained to me, it didn't make any sense. For example, there's a scene where one of the good guys rescues Michael's glove, and then it keeps strangling him, keeps throttling him. So it's like, okay, why would it do that if he's anyway? So yeah, it was a very strange show, kind of on a number by number basis. I was kind of going, oh well, I like this one, I didn't like that one. Stranger in Moscow was brilliant. There was a live vocals for that one, which was unusual in MJ1, but albeit sung by a woman who was inexplicably just floating around in the moon. And so she was singing Stranger in Moscow while like an aerialist was doing some very impressive stuff. So that was really good. Billie Jean, as you said, was fantastic with the kind of neon-clad figures moonwalking up and down the walls and stuff. That was very clever. And then other bits of it was like The Way You Make Me Feel was literally just a load of Cirque du Soleil performers kind of almost half recreating the video. So there were moments in the show where I was just like, I don't really understand what the point of this is, because it's a Cirque du Soleil show and it's very, very light on Cirque du Soleil type material. There's no trapeze stuff or anything like that. So you're kind of going, what's the point of this? It's almost like Thriller Live with about 5% Cirque du Soleil kind of vibe to it. So anyway, it was all right. It's about as much as I can say for that. Oh, the hologram is awful.
So hang on, I've got to ask about that. Yes, that's what I was going to ask about. So this was your first time seeing it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so the hologram at the end, who I think they maybe filmed an impersonator to create the hologram. What did you think of it? Was it obviously an impersonator?
Yes, very obviously impersonator. I would say it's almost certainly the same impersonator they used for the Slave to the Rhythm thing.
Yes.
You can tell it's an impersonator because they do something that a lot of impersonators do, which is because they've learned Michael's moves by copying them off the TV and kind of mirroring them, they do them all backwards. They do them all the wrong way. So if Michael spins left, they spin right, that kind of thing. So if Michael kicks the left leg, they kick the right leg. So it's very clearly a not very good impersonator. I mean, to be fair, there are almost no impersonators that really can emulate Michael to a degree that is convincing at all. But yes, it's clearly an impersonator, and it was kind of just, what was the point of that? Basically, it probably cost a lot of money. It was not worth it. Oh, we went into the merch shop, right? That you've got to see. I'll send you some pictures. You've got to see the quality of this shit that they're selling in the merch shop. I mean, it literally looks like potato print t-shirts. They are so shit. It's almost like someone just coughed some paint on a t-shirt that looks vaguely like Michael Jackson. We did some other MJ related stuff. We went to the Thriller Villa. So the Thriller Villa is what they call the house that Michael lived in Vegas before he moved back to LA in readiness for This Is It. It's now the Liberace Museum, which costs like $195 per person to enter. And I was about $15 interested, so I didn't do that. But I did take a picture outside it. We ended up at we kept calling it the Yoo-Hoo shop because I couldn't remember what it was called. I have just looked it up. It's called the Regis Gallery. That's the hideous shop that Michael went shopping in the Bashir documentary, where he bought all those ugly things. And it's just as ugly and hideous today. No, I didn't go upstairs. Did I miss something important?
No, but when I went there, they'd cordoned off the upstairs bit, which is where he spent most of his money. But I mean, I was so conscious walking through there because I had my camera bag on, and and whatnot. I just didn't want to knock anything over because I'd had to have taken out a mortgage.
Yeah. Oh my God. Everything in there is so ugly and so expensive. And I was taking pictures of some of the ugly shit that they had.
But they hold him in high regard. I don't know if the video was still playing.
They have a wall of MJ photos that are still there. Albeit about 7 of the 10 photos were clearly all taken on the same day. But yeah, I mean, it's just so ugly. Everything in there is so ugly, and they are still selling all the same ugly shit. It's, giant blue and gold urns and all that stuff. I just have no idea who is buying all that stuff. But it was interesting to walk around. But as you say, you're kind of petrified at the same time in case you just bump into something. And as you say, have to sell your house to pay for the ugliest piece of shit you've ever seen in your life. And also, I was taking some pictures, and the manager or some guy that worked there came over and started telling me off and saying, you're not allowed to take pictures in our shop. So I just felt, fuck you, just left. So then went back to it. So we drove back from Vegas to LA because after I rescheduled my trip, by freak pure dumb luck, LaToya Jackson announced that she was doing an event in Los Angeles. I was like, well, clearly I've got to go to this. So ended up going to the Catalina Jazz Club on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles to see LaToya Jackson. That Elise came with us. So Elise drove up from San Diego with her friend Gigi. And we went with Carol Lemire.
Wow, wonderful.
It's amazing.
Yeah, yes. I mean, Carol Lemire used to work with LaToya. She used to do LaToya's hair. She did LaToya's hair for the Playboy shoot.
Oh.
So that was kind of like a little mini reunion. And I wish I could find a way to make that LaToya event sound interesting, but I really can't. I mean, I'm glad I went because it would have been crazy not to go. But it was in this jazz club where they charged you like $100 for a ticket, and then when you got in, it said all customers must buy dinner. You must order a minimum of 2 items off the menu. So had a very overpriced dinner, and then LaToya came on, and to call the conversation superficial would be generous. I mean, it was literally just like an hour of LaToya going, I love everything, like that. Just, and the questions were so dumb and boring. It was just kind of a complete waste of time, to be honest. Just LaToya, is that a dress you're wearing? Yeah, it was just like.
So hang on. So it wasn't like something where it was. She had something she wanted to talk about for an hour, like it wasn't her stories or memoirs or anything like that. It was a Q&A session, it sounds like.
She was being interviewed by a guy, right? She did this event previously in Palm Springs, and now they've brought it to LA, and probably they're hoping to take it on the road in some capacity. So it's a pre-scripted interview, although they don't tell you it's scripted. They pretend it's all unscripted, but actually she did 2 nights in LA, and I know people who went to the other night as well. And it was literally the same interview both nights, including, so for example, one of the questions he asked her was, if you were to get into a relationship, what kind of person would you want to be in a relationship with? And she kind of went, oh, how can you ask me such an embarrassing question? And then the next night she literally did the exact same thing. So the whole thing is just scripted, and it's all very, very kind of nothingy. No, there was no discussion, for example, of Jack Gordon. There was no discussion of her having had to do things in her career that she didn't want to do. There was no discussion of how militant and vocal she was after Michael died about the will and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it was literally just the most superficial kind of nothingy fluff conversation you can imagine.
Interesting. Because you'd assume that LaToya would know what people would want to hear about from her life and career. Why would she choose to make it so light?
My impression was that she was there because she wanted the money. That was my impression, if I'm being honest, right? I mean, because after the event, there was a meet and greet. So certain layers of ticketing included a meet and greet. And that included my ticket and the people that I was sitting with. In the meet and greet, the best way I can describe LaToya is she was like a bewildered hostage. It was almost like nobody told her there was going to be a meet and greet. She looked completely, almost horrified by the idea that she was having to meet people. What they did was they sat her at a table on like a little stool, and then they literally put a rope, the kind of rope you would expect to see outside a nightclub, like a red rope in front of her, so that nobody could get really anywhere near her. And then you had to walk past her and stand about 5 feet away from her, and they took your picture, and then she would sign something for you. And she just looked completely like a deer in the headlights. The next night, so I didn't go to the next night because I'm not a glutton for punishment, but I do know people that went to both nights. So on the first night, she would sign 2 things for you, albeit I only took 1. But on the next night, it was 1 thing per person, and they actually taped a cross on the floor for the second night, and you had to stand on the cross. You weren't allowed to go anywhere near. For fuck's sakes. So yeah, the whole thing was just very bizarre, to be honest. I saw James Allay there from Faking Michael. That was the first of a few days that we spent with him. Oh, we met. How weird is this? In the audience was Jackie Wilson's daughter, Sabrina Wilson. And so we ended up meeting her and taking pictures with her. She was really lovely. Geraldine Hughes was there, so I went over and said hello to her. She was very complimentary about the MJCast and said thank you for the interview that we did with her. And as Elise and I were sitting down, when we first got seated, when we went into the club, we got recognized by an MJCast fan who came over to us, whose name was Envy. And Envy was saying they were a huge fan of the show and that they recognized us from across the room and that it was like a double. It was like a 2-for-1 offer because they were getting to see LaToya and meet the MJCast. So we took pictures with Envy and chatted with Envy. So hi, Envy, if you're listening. It was great to meet you.
That's great. Hello, Envy.
Yeah, it was, surreal. You fly away on holiday for 2 weeks and end up getting recognized by somebody. It's like, it just very strange. So the morning after LaToya, I went on a boat trip with Vera Sarova, who sued the Michael Jackson estate over the fake songs. So I went on a whale watching trip with James Allay, Vera Sarova, and Maria, who was on our history roundtable. Oh, by the way, when I saw Envy again in the club after the LaToya thing, I was stood with James Allay, and Envy was such a super fan. I said to Envy, "This is James. He's been on the show," and Envy was just like, "Dangerous roundtable, like that quick." Huge fan. Great to meet you, Envy. So yeah, so next morning I go on a whale watching trip with Maria, Vera, James, my travel buddies, and Rashid, who is a fantastic Michael Jackson researcher. Never been on the show, but he's brilliant. We didn't see any whales, so that was disappointing, but we did see like hundreds of dolphins, and then ended up traveling up the coast on a sort of a little road trip. We did a day in Hollywood with James Allay. Nothing MJ related there. Although everything we did ended up taking us to Gavin Arvizo's high school. The whole thing was very weird. We did so many things on that trip. And it was like we'd get there and it was like, oh, we're at Gavin's high school again. everything in LA is like a 2-minute walk from Gavin Arvizo's high school for some reason. It's just so bizarre. Like we were being haunted by the school. So James took us to an In-N-Out burger because everybody raves about In-N-Out burger, and it's not good. So, but he took us to In-N-Out burger.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not. They put salt in the burger. What the fuck is that? I'm not talking about like when they're making the burger. Like, of course, you would put a bit of salt in when you're making the patty, but when they're constructing the burger, they put a load of salt in it. I mean, that's just fucked up. What's wrong with them?
That's not normal.
The In-N-Out burger that I went to was the one right next to the runways at Los Angeles International Airport. And I literally only went there for the view, had a burger, and like it was nice, but I wasn't impressed. But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I had like 80% of the burger was okay, but then for some reason, all the salt in mine was in one place. It was just awful. We went to Rashid's surprise birthday party. And when I got there, Taj was there with his wife, Tiana, so that was nice. Spent the afternoon/evening chatting with Taj. And then my travel buddies and I went off on a 2-day excursion to Santa Barbara with Tom Mesereau's wife. Tom was working, so he couldn't come. So we went with his wife and daughter, went up to Santa Barbara for a couple of days. And then came back, and this is when the weirdness really happened. So we're driving around with Konstantinos, just kind of bumming around, really, not, just he was doing his usual thing. Oh, that's where, Sigourney Weaver lives and all that stuff. And anyway, we turn into this little shopping parade. It's like a little parade with like a deli and a Starbucks and a couple of other things. So I'd been doing this thing the whole trip. I had been kind of winding everybody up by pretending I could see celebrities everywhere. Like I'd go, oh, look over there, it's Judge. You see, that's either Judge Judy or Frankie Valli, that kind of thing. But and anyway, so I just, we just see like some teenager, and I go, oh my god, it's Timothy Chalamet. So we drive into this little shopping parade. Oh look, it's John Branca. And they were all like, oh, fuck, but it was John Branca. We turned into this little shopping parade and John Branca was stood right in front of us. It was like, what the fuck? So
you're joking.
I just got out of the car and just went up to him and just said, oh, you're right, John. Do you remember me? And he just looked at me really blankly and just said, no. And I have met Branca, so I thought he would remember me, but he didn't remember me at all. And so I told him who I was.
Not only have you met him, but he's watched you speak. He's watched you publicly speak at that university event that you went to.
Well, exactly. Yeah, so in 2019, I got flown out by the organizers of this conference at UCLA about honesty in journalism because of my response to the Leaving Neverland debacle. And when I got there, both John Branca and Howard Weitzman were on the panel. And so I was there in the room and ended up addressing this conference literally right in front of Branca and Weitzman and met them in the room. And then I also worked on a documentary for Larry Nimmer, which he ended up collaborating with the estate on, which then never came out. So I know that they've seen that as well. So yeah, but I went up to Branca and said, do you remember me? He just said no. I just told him who I was. And he just looked at me as if like I didn't exist and just went, okay, good to see you. And then just sort of wafted me away. So it's a really nothing encounter, but it was just funny, what are the chances that a car of 4 Michael Jackson fans turns into a shopping center and literally right in front of them is John Branca? It's just utterly bizarre. We went from there, we were on our way to Studio City and we drove through Encino and went past Havenhurst and actually saw biopic shooting in progress. We didn't see Jafar or anything. We just saw the craft services and security standing outside Havenhurst. The part of the road was closed off to traffic to keep it clear for biopic movements. So yeah, saw that. And then went over to a place called Aroma Cafe in Studio City and had lunch with Taj. And then Taj, he got in the car with us and he just took us on like an impromptu tour of the valley. And he was like, just showing us like, oh, this is the studio where we recorded Why with Michael, and this is the house where we used to live, and this is the studio where Michael recorded this, and blah, blah, blah. And he was just kind of giving us directions. Okay, turn left here, turn right. It was funny. He was kind of quibbling with Konstantinos about some of the directions, and Taj was like, Connie, this is, I've lived here my whole life. Just do what I'm telling you to do. It was kind of funny. Now, where else did we go? We went to Forest Lawn, visited Tito's grave. He doesn't have a headstone yet, but he's buried next to Dee Dee. So we went and did that. We went to the Hollywood Farmers Market one morning. Hollywood Farmers Market, by the way, if anyone's not been to LA, or in fact, if you have been to LA, Hollywood Farmers Market is brilliant. It's kind of like a big square, which is full of all different kinds of restaurant and deli and fast food place and coffee shops and all kinds of stuff. And all the seating is communal. So basically, if you are with a group of people who have all got weird and wonderful dietary requirements, if you've got a vegan, somebody that's gluten-free, and somebody that's whatever, I don't know, nut allergy, whatever the fuck, everyone's got some shit nowadays. So you can all go to different places and then you can all convene and eat together. There's a great place at the Hollywood Farmers Market called Bob's Coffee and Donuts. It's been there for decades. It's where the cops get all their donuts. And that's brilliant. That's a great place to go. So I met Jin there. I met Jin Chohan there. So I spent the morning with him, and then Maria came, and a couple of other people came and met us. So that was nice.
I've got to ask something here.
Yeah.
So you've interacted with two people making Michael Jackson documentaries. Are you able to talk about, did you have any chats with them about where they're at with their documentaries? Are you able to talk about that at all?
I didn't talk to Taj at all about his documentary. It just never came up. We spent a couple of days together, but we were just, talking about other stuff and doing other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Jen, yeah, I did talk to Jen, but I don't know. He was telling me stuff. He wasn't telling the MJCast stuff. You know what I mean? So I don't want to.
Yeah, I
don't know if he would want me to talk about the details of what he's up to and what his plans are. But yeah, I did talk to him about it. That's about all I can say. So and then on our last day, we booked our flight, and then they fucking changed it after we booked it. And you know what they're like? They send you a message that says, "We've changed your flight without asking you. You're free to change it if you want, but we'll charge you for it." Yeah, I think it's because there were two flights that were undersubscribed or something, so they merged them into one, something like that. But what it meant was I didn't even tell you. Right, we were in an Airbnb, which was just fucking I'm never using Airbnb again. It's always a disaster, right? So we get to the Airbnb, the aircon has gone missing, right? So I ring the host, and the host says, well, there's supposed to be air conditioning. I was like, I'll pull the other one, right? You know what I mean? So I thought you've just advertised it with air conditioning, and there isn't any. But anyway, I went on the listing, and to be fair, in the pictures there was air conditioning. It turned out that the building management company had taken the air conditioning out because they thought it wouldn't pass a building inspection and didn't tell the owner. So we get there, there's no aircon. It's fucking boiling all the time. It's LA. We're on the top floor of an apartment block. It's boiling, right? Then halfway through the second week, all the electricity cut out. We just had so we went out all day, came home at night, and had no electricity, no lights, no aircon, nothing. Because there was aircon in a couple of the rooms, but it was missing from the rest of the apartment. So they put us up in a hotel for the night and said, we'll get it fixed tomorrow. Sent us a message the next day saying, we fixed it, don't worry. It'll be fine when you get back. So we just went out for the entire day. That was the day we were out with Taj, and when he gave us the kind of mini tour of the valley. So we go back. Of course, it's not fucking working, is it? It's still broken. They told us it was fixed, and it wasn't. So they just cancelled the rest of our booking, and we got refunded and had to move to a hotel. So we were packing our suitcases in the dark because we had no lights and with no aircon. That was no fun. Anyway, we got to our hotel, woke up in the morning, exited the hotel, and discovered it was next door to Jim Henson Studios, which is where We Are the World was recorded. So that was an easy tick off of our sightseeing list, because it turned out we were now staying on the doorstep. So that it would kind of do us a favor in a way. I can't remember what reminded me of that now. But anyway, so on our last day, yes, so we had to check out of our hotel at 11 o'clock in the morning, and we weren't flying home until 11 o'clock at night. So Carol Lemire said, why don't you just come to my apartment and hang out at my apartment? Because she lives in the vicinity of the airport, probably 10, 15-minute drive from the airport. So we get to Carol Lemire's house. She has an amazing, gigantic painting of Michael by that guy that did all the paintings of Michael, whose name I can't remember.
Right. Is it Brett Livingston Strong?
Yes, that's him. Yes. Yeah. She has a gigantic original of one of his paintings hanging in her apartment. Right. And also she produced a signed photograph of Michael that he'd given her as a gift in like 1990 or something, and gave it to one of my travel buddies. So that was nice of her. And then she said, I've arranged something for you. We're all going to go and meet Michael's chef, Akasha. So, Akasha was Michael's chef at Havenhurst. She moved with him from Havenhurst to Neverland in all, she was Michael's personal chef on and off from about 1982 until 1997. So a
That's
big
incredible.
chunk of time. She now runs a restaurant in Culver City called Acacia, right? So if you're ever in Los Angeles, by the way, when I say Culver City, because I remember the first time I went to Los Angeles, I didn't realize that in Los Angeles they have this thing where they call things a city, even though it's clearly just a neighborhood. So,
Yeah.
They have Studio City and they have Culver City and all these. They call everything city. It's
Same here.
It's ridiculous. It's like traveling from Soho to King's Cross. Do you know what I mean? But they call it another city. So it can be intimidating when you go, because if someone says, "Oh, if you're going to Los Angeles, you should go to Culver City," people go, "Fuck off! I'm going to Los Angeles. I'm not driving all the way to Culver City. It's literally just down the road, right?" So if you're ever in Los Angeles, you can go to Culver City to Acacia's restaurant, which is called Acacia, Akasha, and you can be cooked dinner by Michael's former personal chef. Right, so she now runs a restaurant right there, and I had the Wagyu burger, which was brilliant. But what Acacia was really famous for, because I was talking weirdly, coincidentally, I was talking to Taj when we were with him about Neverland. One of the things he remembered very vividly was that whenever you went into the train station, there would be like stacks of freshly baked cookies and donuts every day. So if you went into the train station, you would just find brand new warm donuts or cookies. And the person that cooked all those was Acacia. Her specialty was desserts, right? So when we went to her restaurant, she was like, she sat and chatted with us for a really long time. Of course, she's good friends with Carol. They go way back through their Michael Jackson connection. She brought us, she told the chef, "You need to make some of my banana breads and bring them, bring them over," right? So the banana bread, I can testify, is amazing. It's the best banana bread I've ever tasted. So you should definitely get down to Acacia's restaurant if you're ever in the area. Get dinner and try the banana bread. And she's also got hung on the wall, if you go looking for it, a special gold disc of history, which Michael collected in her name. So I guess because he just had gold discs coming out of his ears and arse, because he sold gold like over and over and over and over. I mean, he went platinum a squillion times. So imagine how many gold discs he got. So he just, I guess, would claim them in someone else's name and give them to him. So she has an official history gold disc that says this gold disc was presented to Acacia to commemorate however many squillion bajillion sales of the history album. So you can go and find that on the wall of the restaurant. So yeah, I guess that concludes my summary of my Michael Jackson adventures in Los Angeles. Any questions?
No, just insanely jealous.
Yeah, it sounds like an adventure, man. And do you have any other trips planned? Because I think it would be amazing for us to meet up in America if I can get over there and catch up with you for any events. Are you going to any of the, let's say, Heal LA events that they might be doing in the next year or two?
I presently don't have any other trips planned. Obviously, the current situation. I mean, we were there when the riots were happening, but we didn't see any sign of those riots because they were all contained downtown because of ICE, the immigration sort of Gestapo service that Trump has set up. Is basically just going around Los Angeles kidnapping anyone with brown skin and hauling them in and accusing them of being an illegal immigrant, including many people who turn out to be completely legal citizens of the country. So there was a storm brewing while we were there, but it didn't impact us. But obviously it has this potential to escalate and get worse. So I would have to watch what's going on carefully before making any further travel plans. Now, the Thriller parties, as best I recall, the decision that Prince had made and announced was that because they took so much organization and work, they were only now going to do the Thriller parties on the 5-year anniversaries of the Thriller album, the Havenhurst parties I'm talking about. So the next one would be 2027. So maybe I will aim to get out there for the Thriller Party 2027, but who knows if by 2027 that might just be dead in the water and they might not be doing it anymore. In the meantime, they're doing these events where you can go and watch a movie on a big screen in the Havenhurst Gardens. The tickets for that are prohibitively expensive. I mean, considering I would have to book a trip to LA on top, but I think the tickets are $700, which is very, very expensive to watch a movie.
Obscene.
In a garden. I mean, I get that it's for charity, but I'm sure they would sell a lot more tickets and probably overall make more money if the tickets were less.
King of popcorn, isn't it?
So no, I haven't got any King of Popcorn, yeah. And they're showing things like, I think the most recent one they were showing This Is It, and it's kind of like, really? You know, I mean, I'm
interesting.
$700 and you're showing This Is It? It's like a snuff movie. So yeah, I haven't got any plans at the moment for any future trips, but I would definitely would be up for a big group get together at some point somewhere. That would be great.
100%. I mean, we'll talk offline about it, but we're planning a UK trip next year, so maybe we can go and see the musical. But yeah, your adventures in LA there sound amazing. I've been to some of the places that you've mentioned, but I think next time we go to LA, definitely going to go to Akasha's restaurant. That sounds incredible.
Oh, I mean, unbelievable. I don't know how I didn't know it was there, but yeah, definitely worth a visit. Really nice restaurant, really great food. And Akasha was very, very accommodating and happy to chat. She absolutely loves Michael. She was saying it was the greatest thing she's ever done in her life. To this day, it's the greatest job she's ever had. She absolutely loves Michael. She used to go on tour with him. And even if she was saying things like, even if he went to an event, so say he was going to a dinner, some kind of formal dinner for an award ceremony or something like that, he would not eat the food that everybody else was eating. The venue would have to accommodate his personal chef or chefs to make him his own dinner. So, which is kind of like, that is a bit extreme, to be honest. But, you know, to like, you're going to the White House and you're like, well, I've got to bring my chef because your food isn't.
That's how you know you've made it.
Yeah. So she has some great stories.
So when you were in Santa Barbara, did you make the trip up to Neverland or did you stay in Santa Barbara?
So the original plan was that Tom was going to come with us, and we were going to go and visit the courthouse, which would have been about 2 days before the 20th anniversary of the verdicts in the trial. And I was hoping that he would be able to show me around the actual courtroom, which is no longer a criminal courtroom, it's now a civil courtroom, and actually kind of show me, you know, this was the prosecution table, this was the defense table, this was where Michael sat, that's where the jury were, this is the witness stand, you know, it's to kind of, so I could visualize the whole trial in my head. So the plan was I was going up with my travel buddies and with Tom's wife and daughter. He had work to do and he was going to follow us up that evening or the following morning, and we were all going to make the journey to the courthouse. What happened was he went to get in his car to come and meet us, and it was dead. There was something wrong with it. He had to put it in a garage, and they were going to keep it for like 5 days or something to try and fix it. So he ended up not being able to come. So kind of the whole point of the trip was to go to the courthouse, and that never happened. So we ended up just kind of pootling around the seafront. We went swimming in the sea. I was swimming in the sea, and the others started waving at me and saying, look, look, look. And it turned out there was a seal like 10 feet away from me or something. But because I didn't have my glasses on because I was in the sea, I couldn't really, it just looked like a blob to me. And yeah, we just kind of went for dinner, and then in the morning went for a walk along the seafront, and then went to the main shopping parade in Santa Barbara and mooched around, really. So it ended up being just a relaxing couple of days. Went to Montecito. I kept telling everyone that everyone was Prince Harry. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. I mean, I went to Santa Maria when we were over there as well, went to the courtroom, but I didn't really understand what was publicly accessible and what wasn't. So I sort of was quite cagily sort of trying to walk up to the door where they would have walked in and trying to work out where everything happened, but I didn't go inside the building. But yeah, that would have been interesting for sure if you'd have managed to get inside. Yeah, and as for swimming, okay, so we didn't stop for long. When I stopped in Santa Barbara, it was literally to go to the airport, find someone that could have an airplane so that we could fly over Neverland. And then after that, we drove down through Malibu. But it's a beautiful area. I'm so glad you got to go there again.
Yeah, I've been to Santa Maria before and stayed in a really horrible little motel where the room next to ours was being used as a makeshift brothel. In fact, the 2 rooms next to ours were being used as a makeshift brothel. That was terrifying. And I did visit the courthouse and the courtroom, but of course, sitting in the courtroom, you don't really know. You walk in halfway through a hearing, you don't really know who's who. It wasn't a jury hearing, so I didn't really get a feel for what the setup would have been for Michael's trial. So that was what I was hoping Tom could have showed me, but it was not to be. There was some kind of event that happened on the day of the verdicts. A bunch of fans went down there and released doves to mark the 20th anniversary, which I studiously avoided. So I was actually looking online to see if there was any footage of that, because I wondered if it was going to be like, 3 men and a dog and some doves, or if it was a big thing, but I never really found anything. I don't know what became of that. Did you see anything?
No.
Maybe it was a damn squib.
Are there any other things you want to chat about from your adventures?
I don't think so. I think I covered pretty much everything. I mean, we went, there's all sorts of things that we did. We went to Westlake Studios. You can peer through the window at Westlake Studios and they've got pictures of Michael and Quincy and bits and pieces on the wall, but no, not really.
That sounds incredible. Super jealous. That is an awesome trip. Well done. We are now going to shift into another section of the show. We're going to resurrect a segment that we used to have years ago called Finds of the Week. And I thought I'd bring this back because I kind of miss this from the early days of the MJCast. I'm sort of interested what our listeners think if they want this section to continue on. But I quite like it because, we're all big fans and we're all watching different things and listening to different things and reading different things about Michael, week to week. So it's just good to connect and hear what other people are enjoying. So we're going to resurrect Finds of the Week, and I'm going to kick it off with something that I've been enjoying in the last couple of days. So I think it's safe to say that fans' favorite Michael Jackson tour, I'd have to say, if we did a survey tomorrow and we said, what's Michael's best tour, it'd have to come back bad, right? Like you'd think so. So I've been particularly interested in this YouTube video that it came out a couple of years ago. I don't even know if we've talked about it on the show before, but in between the first and the second leg of the Bad World Tour, obviously Michael revamped the show quite a lot. You can see what the first leg of the show looks like in the Yokohama performance that's widely available online. And then there's the Wembley show that the estate released in wonderful quality, of course, a few years ago for, I think it was Bad 25. And that shows what the second leg was like. Well, in the middle of the 2 legs, there was a period of time from January 22nd to February 18th, where in 1988, where Michael was hard at work with the Bad World Tour crew, recrafting and recreating the show for its second leg. And interestingly, I think one of the days of rehearsals has been recorded and released. So this is in Pensacola in the United States, and the entire show is available to listen to. Now, this is just a rehearsal, but Michael is singing really well all the way through. It's live all the way through. And so you get to hear songs in this that you don't really hear in any other place. So Smooth Criminal is 100% live. The Way You Make Me Feel is 100% live. So if you ever wanted to hear Michael perform those songs live, this is where you can do it. Now, it is just a rehearsal, so there are certain moments where Michael isn't singing completely full out, but 99% of it is. Like, honestly, there's some bits where he's holding back a little bit, but it's very, very rare. There's also lots of other bits where he's doing vocal ad-libs and experimentation, which you won't hear him doing in the actual show or anywhere else. There's parts of it where the band is taking liberties and doing little jam things that you don't hear anywhere else. It is absolutely fantastic. I stumbled upon this originally from, I think I was watching some Bad World Tour behind the scenes footage. I think it's like, you know how I think it was MTV did like the Bad Diaries or whatever it was. I was watching some of that old footage, and there's a cool little bit in there where Michael is rehearsing Billie Jean, but he's not dancing or anything. He's just in casual clothes and singing, and it sounds so pitch perfect, incredible. He sounds brilliant in it. Especially when he's not dancing and putting all of his effort into his vocal performance. It sounds great. So that got me sort of hooked on Bad World Tour stuff, and then I stumbled upon this Pensacola rehearsal thing. It's, the full length of the show, like it's a 2-hour audio experience. So I'll definitely put that one in the show notes. That's something that I've been enjoying lately, and I hope listeners enjoy it as well.
Now, I might be wrong, but when I saw that in the show notes, it reminded me of a story that Brad Sundberg told at his seminar about them recording different vocals for parts of the Bad album, and Michael was in his hotel room, and I think it was Pensacola across from the Civic Center. I'm not sure, but I think it was, and they were basically running cables out of his hotel room down the side of the hotel into the van to record the vocals. So when you put that story up, it kind of reminded me of that. Another reason to go to one of Brad's seminars, by the way. Yeah. That's really cool that you found that footage.
Yeah, I can't remember if we've spoken about it on the show before. We may have when it first leaked. But it's just well worth listening to. Cool. Now, what have you guys been enjoying lately? Carter, have you been delving into any MJ stuff recently?
Look, I found a couple of little bits which... Look, I found intriguing. Now, I'm always a big one for anniversaries. I constantly go through, when I'm on Facebook, I'll look at my memories to see what happened on this date previously, mainly so I can delete anything that's embarrassing or remind myself of some good things that have happened. And I just happened to click across to the Michael Jackson fandom wiki. And I thought, well, being topical, it's been the 4th of July this week over in the United States. So happy 4th to you over there. Happy Treason Day if you're of British descent and you're that way inclined. That is a joke. Don't take it personally. And 4th of July in the history of Michael Jackson, Human Nature is released as the 5th single from Thriller in the United States. Reached number 2 on Billboard's Hot Adult Contemporary and number 7 on the Hot 100. And became the 5th top 10 hit from the album. And I just like this little website where you can look at, this day in history and things. And this one's got all sorts of things that are just strictly related to Michael Jackson. So 4th of July, 97, Michael performs the first of 2 nights on the History World Tour at the Olympiastadion in Munich. And Debbie Rowe was in attendance. So little things like that. And then the other little thing that I found is a podcast, which is probably a couple of years old now, by a guy called Anthony Marinelli, who works in the studio.
Right, yes.
Yeah, and it's called Michael Jackson's Thriller album, Stories in the Room.
Yeah.
So it's a similar kind of vibe to what Brad does. And there's some cool little, they're kind of short episodes, but there's cool little stories of people that collaborated with Michael on the Thriller album. But for me, probably the most entertaining part of that podcast is the theme music, because it is so 1980s. It is so... go and find an episode just like Michael Jackson's Thriller album, Stories in the Room, and it's got that sort of electronic, music, which I found quite interesting. But the stories on there are interesting as well. So that's my 2 little finds of the week.
Very cool. Thank you, Carter. Love it. I'm actually yet to... I've watched a lot of the Anthony Marinelli stuff on YouTube. I think there's videos of him talking with Greg Fillinganes and recreating different things on keyboards. So I haven't heard his podcast yet. I've only watched his YouTube videos, so I've definitely got to check that out. And maybe we'll get the chance to interview him one day, because he worked on the Thriller album from memory.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All right, Charlie Thomson, find of the week. What do you got?
An interesting one. I just stumbled across it today, and I was glad that I did, because I was lacking a find of the week. But for those of us old enough to remember, In 1996, Michael came to London and performed Earth Song at the Brit Awards. And that performance became kind of infamous because the stage was invaded by a guy called Jarvis Cocker, who was sort of a thoroughly talentless individual from a completely shit Britpop band called Pulp. And he invaded the stage during Michael's performance and said that he was protesting against Michael kind of portraying himself as a godlike savior of the world. He sort of presented himself as pricking the pomposity of Michael Jackson. I mean, certainly I'm not a fan of that Brit Awards Earth Song performance, but nonetheless, Jarvis Cocker is a complete twit. Anyway, it's kind of timely because Cocker's just made a comeback, actually. Pulp have just made a comeback. Anyway, at the time, it was alleged that a child had been injured by Jarvis Cocker's stage invasion. And it was always kind of fudged in terms of, it would say he was accused of injuring a child. And certainly the Pulp fan community have always denied it and said this is lies by Michael Jackson's camp. They were just trying to smear him because he had the temerity to stand up to Michael Jackson's kind of savior complex, right? So anyway, earlier today, I happen upon a podcast interview with a guy called Stevie Webb. So Stevie Webb is a theatre performer in the UK. He spent years in a show called The Book of Mormon, and more recently he's been performing at the Regent's Open Air Theatre in a show called Shucked. And Stevie Webb appeared on a podcast called Call to Stage, which is hosted by Amber Davies. And he was telling a story on the podcast about how one of his first stage performances was as a child in 1996, when he was part of the cast of Michael Jackson's Earth Song performance at the Brit Awards. And in this podcast interview, Stevie Webb describes in quite vivid detail how, as he invaded the stage, Jarvis Cocker knocked him off of the stage and he landed on a barrier between the stage and the audience, which collapsed under his weight. And when he stood up, he was injured badly enough that he was bleeding from his face. Oh. So this podcast interview with Stevie Webb has finally solved the mystery and settled the debate about whether or not Jarvis Cocker's pathetic stunt at the Brit Awards did in fact result in an injury to a child. It did. The debate is settled. Thanks to Stevie Webb for telling that story on the podcast.
That is a super interesting find. Thanks for sharing that. That is really good. Yeah. Do you recall when that actually happened? Was it fairly big news in the UK? Like how much was that covered, that stage invasion?
It was absolutely massive news. And of course, all of the British national press, which it particularly then was completely institutionally racist, among various other problems, among also being obviously institutionally criminal and hacking people's phones and hiring private eyes to break into their houses and all sorts of other stuff. They all sided with Cocker, and actually there was a campaign by one newspaper, it might have been The Sun, but I don't remember, a national newspaper in the UK launched a campaign for Jarvis Cocker to be knighted for what he had done.
Jesus.
And learning that what he had actually done was knocked a child off of the stage and inflicted a head injury on them makes that even more disgusting than it was at the time when we didn't know that detail.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is horrific when you think about what's going on. I mean, I think we could all agree the Earth Song performances, particularly from the mid-90s, are not Michael at his absolute best. But, for somebody to just charge on stage and expose their butt at one of the most important black musicians of all time and to make a mockery of them in that way is just disgusting behavior. And it makes it even worse knowing that the press covered that, siding with him. Shocking, really.
See, for me, I mean, that particular incident, I don't understand why it got so much press. I mean, obviously, Jarvis Cocker, I agree with Charlie, is not particularly talented. I mean, Common People and whatever the other song is proved to be quite popular. But the incident itself, he didn't actually bare his ass. He literally just stood there, bent over and wafted his hands behind his back in front of his ass. Yeah, so he didn't even bare his ass. I mean, there's
bit of folklore then.
Yeah, so it's folklore. It's been built up by the press. It was always built up as he pulled a Mooney on stage. He didn't. He literally just bent over and wafted his hands behind his back. And I'm not jumping to Jarvis Cocker's defence in any way, shape or form, but I think in recent years, Jarvis Cocker has even expressed regret at doing it, because I think he ended up getting arrested and then released without charge. Doesn't mean he's any less of a wanker, but I think it got blown up into something it really shouldn't have been. But yeah, good find, Charlie, to find the kid that actually was injured by him.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, as that's not what he was there to talk about. He was just there to talk about his general theatre career. It was just that this story happened to emerge out of it. I just thought, oh my God, what are the chances that it would turn out to be Stevie Webber, who's now a huge star in London theatre, and just kind of casually solving the mystery.
Yeah, what a coincidence. It's almost like driving into a car park and finding the executor of the Michael Jackson estate. Like you do.
I should have mentioned, sorry. I was so caught up in trying to remember everything I needed to tell you. After that, so we went into Starbucks, and then we were stood in Starbucks looking out of the window, and we could just see John Branca wandering around the car park of this shopping parade. And he was on his phone, and he was gesticulating as if he was having an argument with someone or trying to bat away some kind of imaginary bird or something. And he was just wandering around in circles around the car park. It was all very strange. It was, it was weird.
Mm. All right. I want to throw in another find of the week. This is from Elise, even though Elise isn't on the episode. She did want everyone to know about this cool thing that she'd found. One of our listeners, a longtime listener, Chantel Obrist, has posted, I think, on a Facebook group called Stop All Liars and Frauds Against Michael Jackson, a link to courttv.com. And I have not been to this website or seen these videos yet, but from what I understand, courttv.com has made public all of the videos from the Conrad Murray trial in high quality. And there are hours and hours of videos with all the testimony and everything. So if anybody's interested in learning about Michael's passing or the circumstances that led up to that and all of the witness testimony, particularly around This Is It, then it would be worth checking that out for sure. So I'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Elise, for finding that.
Might have to download all of that. I find that really cool as well, because sometimes, like, TV shows are great and documentaries are great and all that, but sometimes you actually have to go to a court proceeding to find the truth of the matter. And it's not MJ related, but just recently I've been sitting through all of the testimony of Mark Furman from the O.J. Simpson trial. And I've learnt things that he subsequently said in TV interviews which were clearly lies. So, for example, for those of you who've seen the Ezra Edelman award-winning O.J. Made in America, Mark Furman attended O.J. Simpson's house in 1985 for a domestic dispute with Nicole Brown Simpson. And Mark Furman specifically says that he saw O.J. Simpson there with a baseball bat in his hand with a horrible look on his face. And he said, hey, put the bat down, said it 2 or 3 times before getting his baton out and saying, put it down. And then O.J. was nice as pie. Oh, sorry, officer. But through watching the court testimony, he actually says that the baseball bat was leaning up against the house. So by listening to these court testimonies, you get to hear the truth a bit more than you would in a documentary. So it's a really great find, Elise. I'd really like to sit down and listen to some of the, the people that have gone on documentaries in subsequent years around Michael's passing to see what they actually said in a court of law.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Whether it's the Murray trial or the AEG wrongful death lawsuit, the testimony that came out of those, it's a lot of it's yet to find its way into some kind of documentary or book, but I think at some point in the future, they are absolute gold mines for information behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So that's our Find of the Week segment, resurrected. curious to hear what our listeners think about that. So make sure to hit us up with your thoughts. We will continue doing that in regular episodes if you're a fan of Finds of the Week. So if you want to contact us, you can get to us on the MJCast at iCloud.com. We are also on all kinds of social media networks. Some of them we're more active on than others. We are on Blue Sky. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on, where else are we? Twitter. We're on Threads, I think, but we don't really use that. So yeah, you can find us at any of those places, or you can email us. That'd be great. We love hearing from our listeners all over the world. Thank you very much for being such loyal listeners and enjoying the MJCast. We've got lots of exciting episodes still to come this season. We're halfway through. Thank you very much, Carter. I've got to give you a thank you for all of your hard editing work over the last few episodes. There was a time crunch, absolutely, to get the wonderful episode, the Vindication Day episode, out with Josephine Zoni that Charlie did so well. So thank you for editing that. And the previous episode, you've done such a great job editing for us.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. It's my pleasure.
Not a worry. And so now that we've shared the MJCast details, where can people find you guys online if they'd like to connect with you directly?
Well, for me on Instagram, it's at Alpha Charlie Photos, especially if you like to look at photos of airplanes. And on Twitter, it's Charlie W. Carter.
I'm on Twitter at CE Thomson, THOMSON, although I primarily use that to promote journalistic projects that I'm working on, which are generally unrelated to Michael. And I'm on Instagram at CE Thomson Journo. Journo. And there's lots of pictures going up on there at the moment from my trip of the various MJCast and MJ-related people that I met up with and sites that I went and saw.
Sounds good. And of course, listeners, you can hear the MJCast at lots of different places online. You can subscribe to us as a podcast, which is probably how you're listening to us right now, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. We've also worked really hard this season to get our YouTube episodes up a lot quicker. So you can subscribe to the MJCast over on YouTube if you'd like. If you'd like to support the show, there's lots of different ways you can do that, just by sharing the episodes, giving us a rate and review on the different podcast platforms is always really great. Commenting on our YouTube videos, liking them, that kind of thing. But also, if you want to monetarily support us, we don't have anything like a subscription type setup, but we do accept donations. If you want to go to themjcast.com, there's a section up the top of the website. I think it says support or something like that. You can swing us a few dollars through PayPal if you want, just the price of a cup of coffee usually, and that helps us quite a bit. You know, we have quite substantial overheads at the MJCast with things like, you know, server hosting, website costs, and equipment that we're buying sometimes to keep the show sounding really good. So if you feel like you'd like to contribute in that way, you can do that. No pressure at all. If you don't want to, that's fine. You can also find a merch shop that we have. We have a link to that, themjcast.com/shop, where you can buy t-shirts and mugs and different things with the MJCast branding on it if you want to support the show. That's totally up to you. But we thank you very much for listening again. I hope you enjoyed this regular episode full of news and incredible stories from Charlie Thomson about his adventures in the US. We can't wait for his next trip either. Stay tuned to the MJCast. We have exciting episodes coming up, including special episodes where we talk with people who knew and worked with Michael Jackson. It's always great to learn even more about the man from people who were close to him. Thank you very much for listening. We'll catch you next time. Keep Michaeling.